it means that now it's on.
Okay, I think it's live now. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
So we are live now.
We are live now. We should start. Shakib, Fawad here.
Shakib, we are ready to start.
Ji, can you guys hear me?
Shakib, we can hear you. Let's start.
Ji, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ji, we have already Kirat, so we can start with the webinar. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome President ICAP, Mr. Khalilullah Sheikh, and Chairman PAIB Committee, Mr. Khalid Rahman, our esteemed panelists and experts, and our respected guests on Zoom and Facebook Live. In today's webinar, Survivors and Winners Amidst the Crisis, we are going to learn some good insights about fast-moving consumer goods and restaurant industry, which arguably are the most critical segments of global as well as Pakistan economy. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know that Pakistan is the 6th largest country in the world with a population of more than 220 million people and around 35 million households perhaps. It has a fast growing young middle class, ambitious of enhancing their quality lifestyles and hence willing to increase their disposable income. In fact, in last few years, our consumption behaviors and patterns did become significant growth drivers for the sector. On a lighter note, I used to say that actually every individual in the world is either working in the FMCG sector or working for the sector. However, with great opportunities, the sector does have its share of challenges, especially in recent times of COVID-19. Today, we are honored to have some of the most admired leaders of this sector with us as our panelists, along with two experts of the FMCG sector, service sector, who will not only share their views on the industry, but also highlight consumer dynamics and new technologies to support this sector. With us, we have Mr. Samar Hayat, CEO, Tipal Tea Private Limited, Mr. Sami Ahmed, CEO, Procter & Gamble, Pakistan, Mr. Raza Pirbhai, CEO, KFC, Pakistan. We are also joined by Ms. Arfa Sayed, Director, Research, Cantor, Pakistan, and Mr. Yasser Suleiman Maiman, Co-founder, Sales Flow. But before we begin the webinar, a couple of important administrative things I like to mention here for the benefit of all. In case, if technology fails, I can promise that the team will not fail. And in case internet connections aren't stable, say if I get disconnected, my friend, Mr. Fawad Aftab, a fellow member of ICAP and member of PIB committee, will be taking over. In case any panelists has unstable connections during his turn or her turn, I will immediately move to the next panelist to carry on. And whenever he or she joins back, I will go back to them to continue from where they left off. Viewers can question through the Q&A tab on Zoom or comment section on Facebook Live video. The questions will be compiled and included in the Q&A session at the later stage of the webinar. In case any valid question remain unanswered due to time constraint, we will try our best to include those in our post-webinar publication. For Zoom viewers, we will also be conducting few top-of-mind fast polls, which will be activated in certain intervals during the webinar. We will also try to share the results of every poll then and there if possible. We will begin with welcome address by Mr. Khalilullah Sheikh, President ICAP, followed by a panel discussion. Then we will be taking audience questions and end this webinar with a vote of thanks by Mr. Khalid Rahman, Chairman PAIB Committee. So, Khalil Saab, over to you, Khalil Saab. Can you hear me, Khalil Saab?
Shakib, there is some problem in the internet connection. I hope you can hear me now.
Yeah. Loud and clear.
Right. Great. So thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum and very good evening to all the participants. On behalf of ICAP, let me formally welcome you all to this very important webinar on one of the essential sectors of economy, FMCG, dealing with essential goods. My gratitude to all our panelists, Samar Hayat Saab, Sami Ahmad Saab, Raza Pir Bhai Saab. Thank you so much for joining, sparing time out of your busy schedules and gracing us with your presence. And also grateful to our technical experts, Arfa and Yasir. Thank you for joining and thank you for being part of today's program. My compliments to our PAIB committee. Khalid Saab, under your leadership, our PAIB committee is setting new benchmarks. This is the 10th webinar that your committee has organized. We had webinars on nearly all important segments of and the sectors of economy. We had one on banking, oil and gas, energy, pharma, and now FMCG. And also my acknowledgement of the great work that the staff of the Institute, the Secretary, PIB Committee, Amber, Imran, they are doing behind the scenes to organize these webinars over the last few weeks. Coming to this today's webinar, Alhamdulillah, COVID in Pakistan has subsided as we were discussing. I was hearing some of our panelists speaking. Pakistan, Alhamdulillah, we have seen a sharp decline in the number of cases, although we all believe that it is too early to abandon precautions and declare victory. And these precautions are important to continue. This COVID, during its peak, brought us, it was a novel challenge. It brought us several challenges. From business perspective, we have seen over the last few decades, different types of crises, but usually either on the demand side or the supply side. And this was a unique crisis that engulfed both the demand side and the supply side. And also it was a challenge in continuing business operations, ensuring safety of your own team and your stakeholders. So how did this FMCG sector manage during that crisis? Both the demand side and the supply side, and what kind of changes in customer behavior they witnessed in terms of online ordering and online, the upbeat on the increase in the online ordering model. And as leaders, what kind of challenges they faced. So we have a galaxy of leaders in that sector who will guide us about it, who will share with us their experiences, and what are the lessons that are learned by this sector. So this is all we are going to learn from today's webinar. Once again, a very warm welcome to all of you, and Shakib, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Khalil. Let's start the discussion. I will start the discussion with Raza, with you. Apparently, it seems that the restaurant business in general got the hardest hit during this COVID-19 situation. However, has the industry in general and how it in your opinion, how has the industry in general and KFC in particular managed that situation to cover fixed expenses and inventories in hand, etc. And how actually have you able to boost the overall morale of your employees and of course franchisers as well? Raza?
Ji, Assalamu alaikum, everybody. And thank you very much for having me here. Shakib, to your question, that how did we kind of manage the overall situation? I think it was initially very challenging. When we saw this coming in, one of the things that was really, kind of not easy, but we had speculated because there were global warnings which were being raised to already to us and which were being informed well before in time as the pandemic started to multiply and we got to know from our global company, and they were warning us and they were kind of telling us that these were the kind of shifts that you will have to make. So there was a little bit of preparation time that we got. I think being a multinational or a franchise operation, that's the advantage that you get, that whatever is happening in the global horizon. So we got a bit of a time. What was really difficult for us in particular was that how do we really kind of shift and how do we kind of change our standard operating systems basically, because that was a big challenge, even more challenged than actually managing our cash flows and all. The big challenge was that how do you really kind of change an overall standards, because these global standards are not really very easy to change, and especially when you're geographically spread it and all, then that becomes a very, very big challenge for you, that overnight you will have to revise all the standard operating systems of yours. So that was a big, big challenge for us. And another challenge was that you're not getting enough time also, because you've got to really change it very quickly. You can't really have fancy trainings and all and everything. You've got to really change, put new safety mechanisms, put new safety food safety standards and all. You've got to really put in place. So I think that was one big piece of challenge that we faced overnight. We had to really kind of revise our standard operating systems. How did we kind of manage our cash situation, and how did we kind of manage the overall crisis? In any crisis, I think what we really our best my best guideline was that how simply can you really define to the organization that what is going to be your priority. So we simplified that what our priority is going to be. And we simplified to a point that only two things was our priority at that time. One was the brand safety. We said that we're going to have, that's our number one priority. And the second was basically that we're going to focus on how we protect our people. So people, culture, and brand safety, these were the kind of, this was our priority. When you simplify that what is actually you're going to chase in this crisis, I think that really makes it also very clear to the overall organization that what you're going to really be running for. So these were the 2-3 things that we kind of spelled out, that this is what our focus is going to be. The third crisis situation is that definitely how do you kind of survive when your restaurants, when your revenue lines are actually are closed basically. What are you going to do? How are you going to survive? Definitely you got to really be well capitalized also. We were reasonably well capitalized, but we were hit badly because in general, our business and altogether the entire industry suffered quite significantly because it went down to a point where delivery was also not permissible. So, and then we had to really rush to the government and explain that delivery is the only safest, mechanism, which is not really been closed anywhere in the world, not even in Wuhan, where delivery was the only channel which was permissible. So you got to really kind of fight that battles with the different because I'm sure there was nervousness at the government level also, and they were really making decisions without kind of understanding that what really is what is a significant thing, what needs to be done and what not needs to be done. At that point of crisis, everybody was just trying to go around and close everything down. So within very few days of, when everything was being shut down, we went to the government and we encouraged and we told them that, delivery is a service. Because what is your objective? The objective of in that crisis was that we want people to be home. We don't want people to get out on the roads. That is, if that is the objective, then we have a mechanism which is of a delivery mechanism that people can order food. We, as KFC were lucky enough because, we already had a very strong delivery footprint. We had already been investing into a lot in technology. So our online, our aggregator online system, our digital and our delivery was already very strong. The third or the fourth advantage that we got was that when every food place, which was basically the casual dining or the fine dining, got closed, and there wasn't really anywhere that people could go, so automatically everything was kind of diverted towards us. But that was us or the 2-3 big brands in specific. This wasn't really the case with the entire industry. The entire industry really suffered a lot because they were mainly reliant on dine-in business. Luckily, our portion of business is such that, our delivery is almost around 30-35%. And which was already pre-COVID, our delivery was around 30-35%. And delivery has been a very growing channel for us for the last 10 years. And that's where a lot of investment is also going. So we were kind of, lucky enough to survive from that. And then, the government was also kind of considering, we went and we told them that, car hop was another new kind of a channel that was established. Car hop is a fancy word perhaps, but this channel was always there in Pakistan, by the way. When you go to Bundu Khan and all, jab hum wahan jaake khana khate hain aur gaadi mein horn bajate hain aur waiter aata hai aur order le leta hai. But this car hop mechanism was not really there in these kind of fancy restaurants. You don't really have that kind of channel. So this channel got introduced, and we were very quick enough to technologically enable this car hop channel. That was another big win that, kind of gave us a very, very good channel, and we were able to kind of hold or recover significant portion of the business. So basically, technology is number one. Our key this thing was that how we survived. Technology is number one answer. The second is delivery, because delivery was already a very stronghold channel for us. So these were basically the 2-3 things which actually got us to survive in this crisis. The last part that I'm just going to mention, that how did we kept the morale of the team and all, as I shared with you in the beginning, that we were very clear that we are not going to go for layoffs. We were very clear. I did town halls. We were very well connected to our community, to our employee community. We did a lot of, like the way that you are doing webinars. We continue to engage our people in various different ways, through webinars, through learning platforms, through e-engagement. And we even did, just to give you an example, that we even went to an extent that, physical part of the employee was also being managed through through Zoom and through various different platforms. So their mental learnings, their physical part, all was being taken care of. So the entire way that our engagement plan was being designed was, one is to communicate more often than ever. The second was that we engage people not only on their mental and on their skill part, but on their physical part also. So we kept them engaged, and our priority was very clear. We're not going to lay off. This is not the time that we're going to be. We did not even lay off a single person in this crisis. And our priority was people. Our priority was brand. So a lot of stringent food safety mechanisms were being put in place. which actually gave a trust on the brand to the consumers. That was our number one priority, that the consumer should feel confident when ordering to KFC, that KFC will ensure all food safety and COVID safety measures in place. So once that was done, people safety and people focus was done, and then technology and delivery was the big piece. So basically these three things, I think, were our survival points.
Thank you, Raza, for a very detailed answer. Samar, आपकी तरफ आते हैं. What do you think? Since आपका manufacturing concern है, पीछे एक पूरी factory थी, and I guess during this whole time period of starting of COVID-19, हमने कभी टिपाल चाय मिस नहीं की shops पे और अपने घरों में. So how important was it to take measures to motivate the company's staff who are required to work on the floor in the plant during the COVID-19 pandemic, because corporate offices जो हैं वो बंद, बाज़ जगहों पे बंद थे, काफी जगहों पे बंद थे, but plants चल रहे थे. So how you motivate those brave people who still were working on the floor, and how are those measures ensured to be effective? Samar?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for the question. I think indeed, absolutely. I think one of the things that happened as soon as the crisis hit is there was a bit of separation between essential services and non-essential services, and food and beverage manufacturing concerns came under essential services. So therefore, we were also allowed to operate from a regulatory standpoint, but from an operational standpoint, there were still significant challenges, as happened when there is mobility issues. There were serious issues during lockdown of transporting, staff from factories back to homes, etc. So all those operational challenges were one part of it. The other part of it was what the area you mentioned, which is how to ensure that we have a winning spirit across our business, across our teams, while we're dealing with a very serious life and health challenge, which at least at that time, if I mean, अब तो थोड़ा पुराना हो गया, but लोगों को याद होगा कि जब बिल्कुल कोरोना का पीक था, तो every single person was extremely nervous and unclear about where this was going to go. So I think one of the things that helped us was being very clear about choices that we were making. So if I were to kind of summarize in three, I think we made three clear priorities, and then we acted on those three priorities. One of them was strategic clarity, right? What I mean by that is we were very clear on what we were doing and why we were doing it, so that when we explained to people, there is no confusion about the choices. अगर हमारे operations की आप बात करें, तो things like cash protection, receivables पे बड़ा focus किया हमने, etc. So those are all operational things. I can go on in more detail later on all the choices that we made on our business that I think really helped us ride out a pretty tough period from my macroeconomic standpoint. Coming to the part about the people morale and motivation, I think again, one of the choices, the first choice was strategic clarity. The second choice for us was putting people first. And what I mean by that is we came out with very clear communication right immediately. I think it was the second week. And I sent a message out to the company. And then also I mentioned it in a couple of webinars that I attended, that we also, like Raza was mentioning, we made a clear statement that we will not have any layoffs across the company, no matter how long this crisis lasts. And in fact, I remember एक वो लम्स का वेबिनार था, उसमें उन्होंने मुझे पूछा कि आपने ये कह तो दिया है, हम आपसे 6 महीने बाद पूछेंगे if the crisis persists, that if you guys were able to in fact somebody asked me, what will you do if the crisis is still there a year later? So I remember I told the gentleman that, look, the thing is, in a 70-year history of a company, what's 6 months or 9 months, right? I mean, you have to look very, very big picture at these times. So we made this very clear commitment that we would have no layoffs. We made commitments like we would provide to all our factory workers monthly ration bags as long as the crisis lasts. जो पूरा lockdown लोगों के लिए problem हो रहा था to get and to retail sector. We made very clear statements and commitments about our safety protocols on our factories and our different offices. Obviously, all the right protocols that we were being asked to follow by the government, and then additional ones. and then all the sanitization efforts of our factory premises, etc. And then lastly, we also made another commitment, which was that we would give unlimited support on testing. So there was a lot of, again, if you remember at that time, a lot of confusion and unclarity on testing and testing. Kiski hogi, kaise hogi. We gave very clear commitment that we would support on testing for people and their immediate families as much as is required. So I think there were some measures that worked. I think it kept indeed the morale very high, and I think also recognizing that the frontline, there's frontline heroes, which are the doctors and all the security personnel at that time. Then there are business frontline personnel, are the sales force that's still in the market selling, and factory workers that are still coming to produce all the product that we are ensuring gets to consumers uninterrupted throughout the crisis. So I think recognizing that there's frontline staff that needs help and that needs clear communication and very clear support, I think was a key. And then all the measures I mentioned.
Absolutely. I mean, बिल्कुल frontline soldiers हमारे लिए FMCG industry के लिए तो हमारे order bookers और हमारे workers ही होते हैं, और खास तौर पे COVID-19 में definitely they were like frontline soldiers. Thank you. Coming to you, Sami. One quick question, if you can, quickly answer it, and then we, move to the second round of questions. Do you agree that the cost of doing business may decrease if we continue with work from home practice? Do you think it may affect the productivity of the employees, who continue work from home? Sami, if you can answer that. Sami, आप connecting? Okay, I think Sami lost the connection, so we move forward. If Arfa is here.
Yes, I am here.
Okay, Arfa, over to you. We start with our market dynamics and consumer behavior round, but before actually asking questions from the panelists, I like you to share some of your insights with the panelists and with the audience. Over to you, Arfa.
Thank you so much for letting me present in this very interesting webinar. My name is Arfa Sayed, and as Shakib has introduced, I come from Kantar and we're in the insights business. So regarding this new normal, we've got some very interesting stuff. And please let me know if you can see my screen, because it's going to be very interesting if I can take you through a couple of these charts. So please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, मुझे नजर आ रही है.
Perfect. So I will be talking about the consumer trends in the new normal, and why I would like to discuss the consumer trends in the new normal is that there has been so much happening, and we see a big resistance inside Pakistan. People think that the new normal is pretty much like the old normal. और कोई चीज़ बदलनी ही नहीं है. Everything is going to remain pretty much the same when you talk to a common person. While in the business community, we do foresee a lot of changes coming into play. However, when we look at the common consumer, the consumers are not really aware of the changes which are flowing into their lifestyles. We at Kantar have been continuously involved in a couple of researches, and we've conducted many research pieces between the COVID times, and we've compared it with pre-COVID data. And there's some very interesting stuff which is happening. So there are a few trends which we see are here to stay post the COVID. And if I just take you through these trends, So if I just take you through these trends, they can be bucketed into 5 different segments. So the first one is the trend of protection, where we will see that businesses will need to not just invest in stability, hygiene, and immediate personal defense, as Summer was just talking about, that they'd spoken about, the employee safety, and they've allowed testing for employees, but there is a big focus on protection, which is coming in from the consumer segment as well. So they would opt for businesses which are well protected. And then comes in the state of well-being, where consumers would opt for businesses which support the overall narrative of well-being and talk about a natural, balanced lifestyle. If I just take you to the next trend, which is stemming in right now, is the trend of flow, where which is very interesting again, because consumers now are focused on long-term over short-term. So investing in whatever products they're buying, they would like to invest in long-term goals rather than the short-term things which they get. The fourth key trend is the trend of connection, which is again a very interesting thing. And we ourselves are connected today in a webinar, and it's a new type of connection and new type of that changed a lot in terms opting for new experiences or with limiting boundaries of virtual and physical world. Please let me know if you can hear me properly.
थोड़ा सा disturbance हुई थी बीच में, but now it's okay.
I'm glad. Okay, so now I will just take you through how these trends are a business opportunity for the FMCG sector. So if I just take you to the first trend, which is the trend of protection, businesses that will claim personal fortification by talking about openness, by talking about safe spaces, ambient health mechanisms, will definitely get some sort of projection and will obviously take a lead. When I talk about the trend of well-being, there is a high emphasis on usage of proactive ingredients. So ingredients which offer immune boosting potential and proactive scrutiny of supply chain stores are what are going to be preferred. And when I talk about the long-term commitment of the consumer with products, it's basically just a simple philosophy of essentials first. So people have undergone a long, prolonged period of uncertainty, and they're developing a renewed appreciation for essential products and services. Talking about connections, we are a very unique generation because we're the generation COVID, and people are united by these unprecedented time, and there is a wave of optimism which is existing in the common consumer segment. Then comes in the bit of experiences where people want multi-sensible experiences, and they would want to seek experiences at the same time as consuming products. Although the same definition existed earlier, but now the way in which consumers embrace and experiences is very different. I will now take you to each of these trends and show you how local businesses in Pakistan have actually very beautifully sort of just clung to these trends. So talking about the trend of protection and personal fortification, we all know categories which have been long struggling to fight the unbranded categories, and milk is one of the most common categories which we see. These COVID times, because of supply chain disturbances and then protective concerns, led to a situation where consumers for the first time in history moved towards packaged from loose milk, and the packaged milk segment saw a huge increase. So the key goal for businesses right now is to retain the trust and sustain the behaviors. And by the way, milk is just an example. You would see it in lentils, you will see it in a lot of other categories as well. So unbranded versus branded is something which was very interesting to notice. The second trend which I would talk about is the trend of proactive consumption. Pakistan is a society where consumers would not really want to invest in their health and wellness in the way they would invest in the Western world. So what happens in Pakistan is that you would like to consume more, and in Pakistan, the consumption pattern is what has really changed in the COVID times. So now consumers are talking about using vitamins, using minerals. In my life, I've never seen CAC 1000 advertising as much as it is advertised in these times. And the most beautiful part is that you would see actual consumers consuming these products, and then comes in the categories like juices, which have actually sort of benefited a lot just by focusing on the vitamin content, and there is a high proactive consumption trend going into play. The goal for marketeers and business community is to leverage this trend of nutritional goal setting and continue it. So the third trend, which I will talk about, is the trend of flow, which is also about essentials first. So this comes in from a very interesting COVID and its impact study, where we saw that around this was conducted in March. And what was very interesting to see was that early in March, 62% of consumers felt that their household income was somehow affected by COVID. And this was in the first 3 months of COVID. So, and this kept on increasing, this number, by the way. So this particular increase sort of made the segment of value players super important. The real thing which marketers and business community needs to understand now is that, we need to establish value understanding that value is not equivalent to price. So just by communicating that this is for ₹100 and now available for ₹100 is not going to help. What really needs to be done is to understand that the consumer will pay a few extra cents as well if it fits in the long-term commitment of the consumer. Another trend which I would like to talk about is the trend of connections, where we do see that very unique connections have formed in COVID, and we do see lots and lots of players talking about EED, and then players talking about just being, an enabler of connection building. And we saw that in these COVID times, the basic expectation which consumers had from businesses was to understand how brands could play a role in this new normal. And the key learning from this particular trend for the marketers is not to just showcase sympathy and summon the consumer, but also talk about empathy and partnership, because consumers want to feel united and they want to have a positive momentum and not really be scared of COVID anymore. And another trend which I would really want to talk about is the trend of experiences, where audience is they're suffocated because of sitting in home for a couple of months. So basically engaging audiences in unique experiences is basically redefining fun, care, enjoyment for this audience. And people are seeking out experiences which are double duty. So they consume something and they also get a time to experience. I have these very interesting two different examples, one from a telco provider targeting youth, and the other one from Dettol, which actually used the social platform of TikTok to create a very interesting campaign in India. The first one is from Pakistan. So the goal for marketers to latch to this trend is basically elevating everyday moments and leveraging the fused boundaries of virtual versus real. I would like to just end this presentation on trends by just asking ourselves, that are we ready for the new normal, and what we really need to do to be ready for the new normal is something which needs constant preparation. So it's not something which can be defined or proactively just thought of. It's something which will need a continuous crafting, because the future right now is just shaping up very different. These are the trends which I had, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to.
Thank you very much, Arfa. The question session will be in the end. Absolutely, pertinent question. Are we ready for the new norm? But another question is, do we have a choice? Probably there's no choice, but we have to be ready for the new norm. Thank you very much, Arfa, for some insightful sharing of trends. Now, everybody can see poll on their screen, and this is a fast, quick sort of poll. In the next 30 seconds, I request all the viewers to attempt this question. They just have to choose A or B, and then I guess the team at the back, they will instantly share the results as well. So in the next 30 seconds, I request all the viewers to attempt this poll. Right. Thank you very much for sharing the results. So we have like 65% people think that they disagree that in the next 10 years, Kiryana stores will be completely replaced by large superstores. Very good. Okay, so coming back to the panelists, I will come to now. I will Sami's. I think Sami sir is back, right? Sami sir?
Gee, I'm back. I
Okay.
had an internet glitch.
Great, great, great. So let me start the discussion on consumers and shoppers' behavioral shift from you. Keeping in view the certain macroeconomic indicators और अरफा ने भी जो कुछ insights हमारे साथ share की हैं, like 62% consumers, they think that their income is a bit affected. So, keeping in view the certain macroeconomic indicators, including unemployment and inflation as well, do you foresee any adverse shift in consumer confidence levels and spending? And if so, how, in your opinion, should the sector respond?
I think in the midterm, I do not see any concern about a major consumer shift in behavior based on the macroeconomic circumstances. And I say this based on the history of the country. If you look at the last 70 years, and I can particularly comment of P&G's 30 years in Pakistan, every 4 to 5 years, we have had some sort of an economic crisis, some sort of a major devaluation, some form of a IMF bailout package, rise in unemployment, which goes down. This is also a part of normal in Pakistan. And we have seen that at the end of each of such crises, we have seen short-term deceleration of the market, but then it has bounced back and can to offer strong growth for different businesses, including the FMCG sector. So midterm, we are very bullish. We don't believe this is the beginning of some slowdown in Pakistani growth. Now, having said that, consumers in developing markets particularly, and also within that Pakistan, demand high value for money for their products. And as Arfa was rightly saying, value for money doesn't necessarily mean low price. It means the right combination of product and pricing. And therefore, I think we are seeing consumers demanding more and more superiority from the brands that they are buying. And superiority in their own relative price tiers. Whatever they're buying, they want the money, every single rupee, to buy the best possible product. And I believe there will be increased accountability on brands and products to offer the right value for money to the consumers through the right product superiority and also brand superiority. And that's what P&G and I think many other players have doubled down on, to offer superior value. And that too, not necessarily through pricing, partly through pricing also, but partly also to ensure that you understand first and then address the needs of the consumers. An interesting macro factor, not economic though, is because the latest crisis has also been health related. We are seeing consumers going more conservative on their choices, i.e. consumers returning back to safe brands, trusted brands, historically proven brands, versus experimenting with new brands which just offer a cheaper price. And that's a global phenomena, but we have seen this in Pakistan as well. So net, yes, there will be some short-term impacts. Mid to long-term, Pakistan, I believe, and P&G believes, will continue to offer great momentum for different companies to operate, but only winners will be players that offer the right value for money through the right superiority of products as well as brands.
Right. So, if I can continue with you, how critical has it become for the FMCG industry, including multinational companies here in Pakistan, to refocus and revisit their innovation and investment strategy? Should they invest to create new niche and premium products, new niche markets, and with focused marketing via social media, or continue with investing in mass marketing and trade promotions? Sami Saab?
Sure. I think both are very important, and let me elaborate. On one side, over the last 10 years in particular, with this whole global media access and internet, we are realizing that consumers are becoming more demanding. And all the niche products, everything starts from the consumer need, right? And the consumer needs are becoming more fragmented and more sophisticated. And I do see an increasing need of niche product offerings and brand offerings to fulfill these consumer needs. So indeed, companies must focus more and more innovation to understand what the consumer wants, and then offer the product and brand propositions which meets those needs. Having said this, base business, right, like the non-niche part of the business continues to be 60, 70, 80, 90% of the turnover of different companies and brands. And this also tells that a huge number of consumers are choosing to buy your base offering. And therefore, a big part of innovation should also stay focused on making your base non-niche part of the business as superior as you can. Sometimes what happens is consumers choose either or. So they distract their innovation resources so much on the niche products that the base offerings over time starts to become uncompetitive and not superior. So I believe absolutely more niche is needed than the past now, but base continues to be the #1 priority, primarily for innovation, but the same goes for marketing spends also. So yes, niche social media support must happen to reach those pockets of consumers, but base communication of your brand superiority through mass media stays equally important.
Great. Samar Saab, coming to you, do you believe that tier 1 brands are facing a real threat with the explosion of small and localized brands in our market? If so, how should tier 1 brands deal with this challenge?
Yeah, it's a good question. I assume you mean by you're defining tiers by pricing, right? Because if we look at from a pricing standpoint, there is on one hand going to always be a pocket of consumers for whom affordability is not such a big issue, and across whether it's a choice restaurant to go to or whether choice of which product to pick up from a grocery store, there's always going to be that very, very upper tier in our society that's not going to care too much about pricing. But then there is a very large middle tier for whom, and I think Sabi made a very good point, which is for whom value is the critical aspect of what they are using to make their decisions. And I think on this one, the key to me is the winners and the losers will be decided not by price alone, neither alone by product performance, but a combination of hitting that very critical sweet spot when the product is just right and the price is just good enough that the brand or whatever category it is, it becomes absolutely irresistible, right? And we have seen that across various sectors. I used to be, Sami was one of my colleagues. I used to be with Procter & Gamble for 20 years. So we across many categories. We saw that in many geographies. I was managing Africa. I saw that there. And then same thing for Middle East. And now same thing on Pakistan on the current tea category as well that I'm currently working on, which is there is at any given point in time, and I think maybe this is something that will be helpful for some of the audience as well. When you're analyzing a business challenge, one of the critical things to analyze is whether the brand that we are offering or product or whatever category we're in hits that very critical sweet spot that exists in every industry and every category, which is when the product is just right for the consumer and the price for that is not too low that they start feeling that it's a denigrated kind of brand image, but it's not too high either. So there is this very important analysis that I think a lot of companies miss out on. And I think those that do it well really, really benefit from it. And we have seen several examples of it across the board. And I'll give you one example from our category. One of our brands that we sell in interior sin is a brand called Chanak. It's a tea brand, which is a different blend than some of the other well-known brands that we have, like Tapal Danedar or Tapal Family Mixture that people are used to. Now this brand offers for the very special, unique niche of interior synth consumer, just the right blend with just the right strength that they need. And the pricing, because we're talking about very poor parts of our country, which is rural interior Sindh, the pricing is just right where they are, where it's still expensive for them, but they're willing to make that decision. And versus that, we have several players under that price point of this brand channel, and they are there are different names. Some of them are counterfeiters that try to come in, etc. The price is lower, but the product performance is just not good enough. And in some cases, there are competitor brands that have come in at slightly higher pricing, right? But again, the product performance is not worth that premium that consumers have to pay. So I think the way I look at this whole tiering, and how it's going to play out in Pakistan as well, is that as long as companies get the sweet spot on product performance and pricing right, after careful analysis and careful understanding of the consumer and all of those things, there's I think it's going to be very hard to beat those companies. And those that get it wrong will get, I think, swept away by a plethora of players below them and above them.
Right, thank you. Raza, आपकी तरफ आएंगे. Again, about the trends we are seeing, और जो अरफा ने भी हमसे बात की कि like people are now preferring good lifestyles, protection and well-being का जो element है वो ऊपर आ रहा है, emerge हो रहा है. Do you see KFC's chicken-centric menu and the increasing trend for healthier food as barriers to growth in Pakistan market for KFC?
This is a global discussion going on in the KFC world a lot, that with all these health things going on, what's going to be the scope for KFC in future. For Pakistan, I guess we're still in safe zone, but yes, the health trend is kind of it's gaining momentum, and people are now more aware. But with the kind of food that we eat at home, we don't see that as any big challenge at the moment. We still consume much more kind of unhealthier food at home. I'm not saying that KFC is unhealthy. I'm saying that we eat much more unhealthy food at home. KFC is relatively much more cleaner, healthier. Yes, apart from the fried, if you're kind of trying to ask me on that, apart from being fried, but yes, it is becoming a little bit of a challenge, but not that we see as a great challenge in Pakistan for now, as we see that the consumer palate over here already eats a lot of very heavy deep fried food. So we don't see as a big challenge, but yes, it's kind of globally it is becoming a concerning point, not that we see in Pakistan for now.
Right. Yes, I absolutely agree. हमारी nation तो यही कह रही है ना कि जी हमारा तो कोविड नहीं बिगाड़ सका कुछ, तो पकौड़े और ये समोसे और ये क्या बिगाड़ेंगे. And you're absolutely right कि KFC वो तो बिल्कुल safe तरीके से बनाया जाता है. Well,
Shakib, one thing that what we have noticed, what Arfa was saying, what Arfa was saying is very relevant, was that consumer actually, we saw a shift towards more of us, because we saw that consumer wanted to shift to more trusted brand, more labeled, more known. Because consumers actually opted for the brands that they knew that they're going to have safe food safety standards. So we saw more of a shift towards us rather than consumer moving away because of any nervousness towards our product or our brand. I think as Sami also mentioned that that's where we got an advantage also, because consumer wanted to shift to much more trusted sort of a place where they can consume food. And the other part what we saw was also that that
Sorry,
consumer
I have to, and sorry, I have to interrupt because poll 2 is there, and I want to request viewers to attempt this poll first because in 30 seconds time, बल्कि अब थोड़ा कम time रह गया होगा, ये चला जाएगा poll. So let the viewers first attempt this poll, and then we will continue.
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. So almost 50% people think that penetration in rural market is basically is going to be the most significant growth drivers for FMCGs in Pakistan. Well, good, like top of the mind thing for FMCG sector. PNG is here. PNG, sorry, Sami, can you comment on this particular poll result just in a quick 1 minute?
Fortunately, my net has been a bit bad, so I just got reconnected. Could you just share with me what the result was?
Can you see the screen?
I can see you on the screen. I think the poll is now gone.
Okay, we have a poll question, and it asks that in the next 5 years, the most significant growth driver for FMCG in Pakistan will be, and we have 3 choices, and out of these 3 choices, 50% people think that penetration in rural market is going to be the most significant growth driver. Do you agree? Just in 1 quick minute.
Yes, absolutely. And the reason is in Pakistan, the market share is a small contributor to growth, but total market size growth is a big opportunity. As an example, a lot of people today would be using cloth as a nappy. So moving those people from cloth to baby diapers, that's where most of the growth will come versus one diaper brand eating share from another. So I fully agree. And that opportunity is the largest in suburban and rural areas. And I do believe as distribution and awareness of brands and the superiority they offer increases, that's where bulk of the growth will come.
Great, thank you very much. Sorry, आपकी बात कुछ रह गई थी बीच में, Raza?
Just last point to what Arfa was saying. I just wanted to add that what we saw as a consumer behavior, I just wanted to add that because everything was shut and there wasn't really any place where consumer could actually spend money, and the only entertainment was to eat food at home. So that was also one of the shift that we saw, that there was a huge uptake on our delivery channel, because one reason was this, where consumer could not really go out, the only entertainment was home, and it was a big portion. So we saw that our average check kind of went up also. So there was a larger portion that consumer were ordering, and more often also. So this was just that I wanted to add. That's all from mine.
Okay, thank you very much. समर आपसे सवाल करते हैं टेक्नोलॉजी एप्लीकेशन साइड पे. Greater process efficiency is required, smart and connected operation days, which will undoubtedly lead to application of industrial Internet of Things and other applications. How soon do you believe that that this revolution of IoT and in fact I should say IIoT may happen in our country?
I think we are actually moving pretty fast. I mean, people seem to have an opinion about Pakistan outside Pakistan, that Pakistan में कोई थोड़ा सा कोई backward अभी तक हमारा systems हैं, and our internet penetration is very low, etc. The reality is that if you look at the speed at which our both our industrial side and our consumer side is getting tech savvy and tech enabled. The speed is incredible. I don't think there's enough numbers. I was in a discussion with Amir from Jazz, Amir Ibrahim, who runs Jazz, and some of the data that he was sharing in terms of how fast the digital footprint is expanding across both corporate and consumer in Pakistan. It's multiples of hundreds, not multiples of tens or 20s. So I think we are not very far at all. I think we already had people, and I'm sure other people are experiencing it. We had people come and talk to us about, I don't know, I'll give you an example of trucking, right? The entire trucking industry of Pakistan, which is still running on this old system of contractors and a little bit of network-based trucking operations, etc. I think we're not very far away from where trucking will be like Uber, right? And you've heard of these apps that are coming where you can go, app-enabled trucking, purchasing choices you can make as a supply chain, person. So there will be, I think, these leaps that Pakistan will make. It cannot be stopped. Just like social media in Pakistan now is, for good or for bad, both a bit, has gone beyond where it can be pulled back. Similarly, this will also, I think this will also come, and it'll come very, very fast. It's just a matter of one app after another getting adopted, the infrastructure of digital space also moving as fast as it is. If it just moves as fast as the expansion is going for the next 5 years, we'll already be, I think, in a totally different place than we were a year ago, right? It's just it's going to be phenomenal, and it's going to be very interesting for all of us who have to make decisions on our businesses. Raza was mentioning, or things like making the business tech enabled when there is a trend change, so that you can catch up to that very fast. We're all having to deal with these kind of challenges. Retail, I'm sure you'll come to those questions about e-commerce and all of that. Retail will be another incredible sector that will see, I think, some level of transformation with this. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be, in my opinion, it's already happened, and it's going to accelerate.
Good. Thank you. Sami, I'd like to ask you, about a particular question with respect to FMCG sector, and that's about culture of meeting madness. Some people argue that FMCG sector has a culture of meeting madness, where we have meetings held too frequently, poorly timed, and badly run. Are there any technology-enabled solutions available that operates with a high degree of automation and speed to avoid wastage of human time? Since you are coming from a big multinational company, koi best practices you can share?
First and foremost, very relevant question. And indeed, we spend much more time on meetings versus what is effective and efficient. I don't know how centric this issue is to FMCGs, but in general, I think corporate world mein ye issue hai, including FMCGs. And I believe the biggest set of solutions are more on human discipline, and then we can also leverage technology to support that. So simple things like having clarity on the objectives of the meeting. It is a very, very simple thing. In every management book, it's the first thing. But if you look at actual calendar invites of meetings, probably 20% of the meeting would have a clearly stated objective. The remaining 80% won't. Like people say, right? It's easier to know what to do, but it's difficult to do what you know. So this is one of those areas where operational discipline is missing. So that's one, being clear about the objective of the meeting. That's one thing we have made it mandatory. If a calendar invite doesn't have the objective clearly written, we decline. The second thing is also, we have come up with the concept of power hour, which just forces the meeting duration to be 60 minutes. And any exception to that has to be rare. This also has significantly reduced not the number of meetings, but the time consumed in a meeting. The third element is the attendance. So the same meeting of 1 hour for 10 people versus the same meeting with 20 people in it, or versus the same meeting is 5 people in it, means 1/4 potentially the time wasted of the organization. So I think being very, very sure about truly having those people who are critically needed to add value, while the number of meetings and the duration could be the same, could still dramatically reduce the time required. And the last thing is, and this is something we have more recently adapted over the last couple of years, is a concept of pre-read, which means whatever you want to discuss, send it out, if in form of an email or a one-page document, so that people can absorb the data, make up their minds, versus coming and wasting everybody's time going through the data. Because we were seeing that 70 to 80% of the meeting time was being spent not on the discussion or the decision, but just on making the case, which could be made much faster. And then there were debates happening on whether this data is right, and some other department says, no, it's not really right. So if you send the stuff in email, it saves a lot of time. Amazon, I really like what Amazon is doing is people were walking into meetings without reading the pre-read. So they said, listen, every meeting, first 10 minutes, we go and read the stuff together, and then we debate and decide. So I think these are the more human discipline parts of the solution. And I believe this is where majority of the simplification will be done. On top of that, indeed, technological solutions. So first, I'll talk about one extreme. Meetings that people have to travel in. This requires, for a 1 hour meeting, people have to spend 3 days, right? So these kind of Zoom connects we are doing, COVID has enabled a lot more confidence in technological effectiveness of virtual meetings. So that will save a lot of travel time for people. But beyond that, a lot of project management tools like Microsoft Teams, etc., are helping us keep the discussion focused on action, track previous actions, define key owners, and then run the meeting agendas, populate the meeting agendas automatically. I'm just giving one example. I'm sure there are a dozen others. So using these disciplined project management tools, virtual attendance for travel participants, and then a lot of human discipline, I think this in combination can improve. We have made a lot of progress in the last 2-3 years. Now our meeting time is less, and we do an org survey on simplification, and the scores are much better. So the organization, it's an anonymous survey, and people have given us positive feedback. But still, I believe there's a lot of room to be covered for improvement.
Thank you. Coming to you, Raza, recently, and again, technology related question. Recently, we, observed a greater shift towards online ordering, Food Panda, and you also did mention that in your first round was maybe. My question is, will there be any change in the business viability of the franchises due to this technological shift?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are already, so what is going to happen is we are already now, look, I'll tell you just what the live example of KFC. Earlier, we were trying on and thinking of more dining and bigger dining. All that is going to go away. So what is really going to happen is, and this was pre-COVID, by the way, this wasn't something that COVID has come in and revealed us. This was a shift that we were already seeing when technology started to kind of take over, and the business started to shift towards more of out of store and in delivery. So we had already seen that shift. Definitely this shift is bringing in the way we operate. It's going to change the entire dynamics, the layouts, the kind of site decisions that we make, because now the decisions that we are going to make is going to be based on primarily more delivery friendly than dine-in. But that's not really, I don't mean to say that the dine-in is going to disappear. Definitely brick and mortar is going to stay there. It is going to evolve. What we see, or I foresee, is that what's going to happen is that dine-in is now going to be more experiential. That's what is going to be required in dine-in. A little bit of an uplift that each and everyone in the food or in the retail arena will have to do. So every retail brick and mortar will have to enhance their experience. Delivery, or the online or technology side of it is going to be more driven by value and the offerings and the promotions, and that's the channel that's going to evolve in that direction. So that's what we anticipate. But yes, what your initial question was, that the way the model is it going to change? Yes, it is already evolving. It's changing. We are also now trying to put in more delivery, Delco based, drive-through based stores rather than the dine-in stores. So definitely all that is going to change our model, our cost structures, everything is going to change. Yes.
Okay, good. आप request करेंगे यासर सुलेमान मेमन से कि he should share some of his views as an expert about technology, how technology is helping FMCG sector in dealing some of its challenges जो previous सालों में हमें face करने को मिले हैं. Over to you, Yasser.
Thank you so much, Shakib, and thank you for having me. I think technology, of course, has been the talk of the town since the time the COVID started. People started saying that maybe it was COVID that was behind the entire technological transformation and not the CTO or anyone else. But I think it's important to understand that it is not like the technological transformations have not really been taking place. I think there have been like two very broad classifications of technological transformations that we all as an organization have been driving. What was happening for the last 5 to 10 years was that we were all busy in terms of doing incremental transformations in our technology stack. So we would be trying to be more efficient. We would be trying to cut costs using technology. We would be trying to drive growth through technology. And it was more about digitization of existing business processes was what was going on. But as you see that as a transformation really catches up, as the overall penetration of technology catches up, it starts to introduce completely new business models. This is something we actually see as an enabler for any technology. So most of the FMCG sector you would see them implementing ERPs, moving towards SAP, for example. You would see warehousing to become more efficient. But what COVID actually did in this particular era was that all of a sudden technology had enabled enough of the consumer base and the industrial base to be ready for a business model shift at the same time. So everyone started to really question themselves and ask themselves that has the entire enablement really happened to now have a completely new business model actually come in? So like Samar and Raza and everyone also mentioned that it is not that the brick and mortar stores will go away. The brick and mortar will actually be here, but technology will enable them to be a lot more powerful. So what we've really seen is that we have 135 million of a mobile internet base right now in Pakistan. Now that's a number that is comparable to any large country in the world. It's actually in the top 5 countries. A lot of people miss out this particular number. It is just behind India, China, Indonesia, Brazil, and US. You basically stack up there. Now, when you have that type of an enablement that has actually happened, and it's kind of been a silent penetration that has happened, a lot of new business models can actually come out. So the way Uber or Careem actually happened suddenly, it is not that technology was born suddenly. The penetration of that technology was actually happening slowly and gradually. So what we are starting to see is that, for instance, in the retail segment, business to business e-commerce is a new segment that is now emerging very rapidly. People are asking that, if there are two businesses, they have to transact. Why should there always be a physical contact that is required for that transaction to take place? SAP, for example, globally launched their SAP marketplace, where a Coca-Cola manufacturer would be being able to procure bottle caps from multiple markets that have SAP that's deployed. So we're having procurement being done through multiple businesses. Similarly, we've started to see same actually happening in the Kirana sphere for FMCG. I think it's important to mention here that Pakistan happens to be, a top 5 market for a lot of FMCG categories. Take tea, for example. Someone would agree that Pakistan is amongst the globally top 5. So while we have a great population, but we also amongst the top 5, for that. And what was actually lacking was we didn't have the type of infrastructure that was required to really, kind of catapult and, digitize this sphere. So the COVID era, I think while all the challenges that actually came up, there were 2 or 3 realizations that happened for every organization. Everyone did realize that there is something called a black swan. For the first time, they said, we say that, it is not something that you just put up in an SOP and put it as a business continuity measure. These things do happen. The force majeure clause in the contracts became quite evident that, force majeures can happen. So people started to look at it. And there was a very different perspective of technology. It was not looked at as an incremental gain anymore. So it was not that technology will be used for, just running RFIDs to enter a building, or technology will be used just for, doing great inventory management. But because the democratization has happened for technology, we see a lot of new business models coming up. It is not technology that really disrupts businesses. It is the new business models that are born because of technology. So if you really look at mobility, the iPhone was born in 2007. So the mobile platform actually came in at that time. It is today that we have 134 million Pakistanis using mobile internet. It is today that out of the 650,000 Kirana stores, we have more than 50% of them actually carrying a smartphone. So it is today that the democratization can actually take place for these Kirana stores, like for them being able to place orders. So in COVID, while e-commerce was booming for the, the SEC A+, or you can say the lifestyle measure 11, 12+, what we started to see was that the vicinity shopping really picked up. And the organizations that had actually invested in digitization of the value chains, those were the ones that were able to benefit. So one key takeout that is actually coming up is that it is fine to look at incremental investments for technology, but technology has to be looked at as a enabler for completely new business models. That's a complete new era. You may have very, very powerful brands, but if we cannot get a great distribution for those powerful brands, if we cannot get it to the consumer, there will not be much value we'll be able to extract for the consumer and for ourselves on that.
Thank you very much. Now we have our third poll, I guess. So if IT team can, yes. So viewers, you can see poll 3. You can have 20-30 seconds with you to answer this poll, and then we can have the result as well. Okay, great. So the question is, technology and automation will increase unemployment for less skilled workforce in Pakistan, and the poll result says that 64% believe that it does, but it does only moderately. 30% believe that it will significantly increase unemployment for less skilled workforce in Pakistan. So interesting results. Thank you, IT team, for sharing this result instantly. One last question to end this discussion. Anyone can answer, but I will request Sami if you can answer this first. As a business leader, what you expect from your finance department in terms of changing their ways of working, keeping in view the challenges and opportunities we just discussed?
Sure. First and foremost, the most important job of management is resource allocation and making choices on where would you put the financial resources as well as human resources. And I believe the department which can play the most significant role in shaping these strategic choices is finance. There's always a list of opportunities and you have to be very choiceful. You can't go for all. And this is the number one expectation from the finance department, to see what are the opportunities, what's the size of prize of each opportunities, what's our fundamental ability to compete in each of those areas, and hence an opportunity to win. And then eventually, what's the value creation for the company, so the return for the shareholder. So all departments play a role here, but finance has, I believe, inherently the most important role to play. That's my number one, I think, expectation. And then secondly, as everybody talked about, offering superior value to the consumer, productivity is the biggest part of offering that superior value, right? Unless you work hard on productivity and efficiency. And again, this is an area where every function every department has to contribute, but finance can play a disproportionate role on actual contribution as well as providing thought leadership to other functions. So these two will be the top, expectations on how the finance department can contribute.
Okay, thank you very much. Samar or Raza, if you want to add anything in this, for this, in responding this last question.
Just one word: don't be conventional. That's just my this thing. Just don't be conventional. Be open to new things that are coming in. We are all learning in together. Finance needs to learn. They don't have all the answers. That's it.
Okay, good. Very candid sort of response. Samar?
No, I think Sami said it very, very well, which is, I think, the conventional point that Raza was making, which is somehow, I think, in the world that we've grown up in the corporate world, there is this mindset that finance is about managing the books or keeping things in order, and etc. And I think over the years we have seen that the real evolution has been on strategic analysis. So finance becomes a key leader in an organization on strategic analysis, helping top management make choices and guiding them on the value that exists in those choices, or the lack of value that exists in some of those choices. And I think that role, I'm not sure 100% of the finance community in Pakistan understands or embraces, but I think in some organizations it's more evolved than others, and globally I think it's gone to another level already. Which is, so I think one of the things that would be good for, I think, everybody who is going to have a career in finance is to understand that the role is not just financial management. The role is strategic in nature, and I think that I think would be good for people to adopt.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we may now go to Q&A session. If the team at ICAP can share the questions. Right, so on our screen we have some questions. So the first question is, has COVID impacted the distribution and logistic? Sorry, let me minimize this thing. Okay. Yeah. Something is actually hindering my screen. Okay, yeah. How has COVID impacted the distribution and logistic, more specifically managing stock levels at primary and secondary level of FMCG industry in Pakistan? A question for P&G. Sami.
I think COVID per se has not impacted on an ongoing basis the distribution and logistics. In the short term, of course, given the mobility limitations driven by lockdown, there was a lot of impact. But ongoing basis, none. However, COVID has led to some changes in the shopper behavior. So we are seeing shoppers now going more towards e-commerce than before. We are seeing shoppers go more towards modern trade, which is supermarkets and all, versus the grocery stores. So this natural evolution has it has speeded up this evolution of trade salience. And with that, some changes in the supply chain, have to be advanced as well.
Right. Do we have any other questions? Yes. Okay. HoReCa sector is on ventilator since mid-March when COVID-19 started. Let us see whether there is any light at the end of tunnel. Hope it isn't the light of an incoming railway engine. I think Raza, although you already have answered this question, but if you just very briefly can.
Right. I think as I shared, it has affected the small, restaurants or the casual dining and other dining. It hasn't really impacted where the delivery was strong. Yes, it has affected. It's going to stay like this. We don't see that there's any, because we at least for hotel and for restaurant industry, we see a dark time up till December, at least for dining. It's going to stay like this until this entire COVID cloud disappears and consumers get more confidence to come in and dine in more. By the way, there has been a significant kind of a good response that we have seen since the time the dine-in has opened. So I think the dark time in Pakistan is at least going to get over soon. So the good days are coming. That's the answer.
Shakib, I think you're on mute if you're saying something.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. COVID-19 is not only a pandemic, but it is forcing us to find a new way of connecting with customer and fulfilling their demand. As demand is there, but supply should not stop in this sector. How quickly our FMCG can go online to tackle this kind of situation in future? So more and more options are available. There is need to have national payment platform. Using that, any person can pay online. Sometimes people have money in bank but not in pocket, so FMCG can work with SBP to develop. Okay, so I request Yasser, if you can share something on this particular payment on national payment platform or
I think as a key enabler for FMCG moving online, at least all the FMCGs got a good litmus test in terms of the readiness of our consumers to be able to adopt. The overall e-commerce penetration did significantly go up in the month of April, May, June. Of course, it's come down slightly after the market is reopened. So there's a lot of confidence in terms of the habits and attitudes of our consumers. They can definitely move up there. This last 3 months also made the entire industry realize that what are the key enablers that the industry as a whole has to really work upon. And surprisingly, you would see that somehow payments is not really a major bottleneck for flourishing e-commerce in Pakistan. It is actually your entire supply and logistics, the fulfillment end, which still remains the biggest bottleneck when it comes to expansion of e-commerce. Predominantly, Pakistan is a cash on delivery market, while people, who are more accustomed, they love paying online if they have the trust. More so because of the trust in terms of the product they receive, they also choose to pay on cash on delivery. Having said that, there are a number of initiatives at play by the State Bank of Pakistan, and there are a number of merchants that have been sanctioned that are currently able to accept payments. It is not the top level offering of having merchant services for processing payments. It is more about the adoption of the larger economy, the larger audience, the 220 million people having a digital payment account to be able to make the payment. So, however, we do not see cash on delivery or the fintech area as a major bottleneck right now. It will become a bottleneck, but at this particular stage, the bottleneck is actually the fulfillment and logistics, as we understand it.
Okay, thank you. Another question, this is about CSR, as one of the key responsibility of an organization towards society. Can you please share how it has been challenging to fulfill this responsibility during COVID-19, and what measures have been taken place from summer Hayat Party demand will pull back to normal and then growth? I don't understand this last part, but Summer, if you can answer this CSR.
Yeah, sure. I think I mentioned it earlier in the beginning of the session that the first thing we took upon ourselves was the responsibility towards our employees and our workers in our factories. So while that is not a larger society service, it is still a very key service to have towards the people that we are responsible for as in the company. So we did that, and we did several measures which I mentioned already. We also, of course, stepped in to, if you remember, there was a big concern about daily wage workers that were going to really struggle during lockdown, and there were several programs being initiated to help daily wage workers who were not able to get access to daily labor, etc., as there was major shutdowns in the construction industry. So as that happened, we put together a program to be a major contributor in ration bag preparations. Tea becomes a very important part of a ration bag that is put together with the other commodities, including atta, ghee, chini, vagara ke saath. So we did our part, and I think it was essential for us to understand that it's not a choice. It is something that is obligatory upon us to do. As one of the leading companies from Pakistan. So we did that.
Yes, absolutely. It's not a choice. It's our responsibility. Next question, Sami, I request you to respond. How we may motivate vendors for VMI at their end, as it incurred a cost of vendors, and so what motivational factors can support to manage VMI? And of course, with vendor managed inventory, with VMI, I'm sure the question is also about just in time JIT deliveries as well. So how do you respond to that? Because I guess you not only produce here in Pakistan, but a great deal of supply chain relates to imports as well for PNG, I guess.
Yeah. It's a combination. So the first part is efficient inventory management, right? And cash, is the most important part of any business's resources today. And there are multiple models of managing inventory in the most efficient way possible, starting from the right level of forecasting, which is based on true business trends, and also a lot of automated solutions now. Now, coming to vendor management inventory, I think if I understand the question correctly, they're saying instead of the corporates keeping the inventory at their end, you encourage their partners and vendors and distributors to keep the inventory and hence the cost at their end. I think like any other commercial discussion, it will be successful and sustainable if it's a win-win on both sides. So first question is, would VMI truly create value for the system if the inventory being at the company and you move it to the vendor, and net there is no efficiency created in the process, then obviously it doesn't create value. However, like in most of the cases, getting inventory closer to the consumer and hence to the shopper leads to more efficient level of inventory, and hence the system benefits. And then that benefit is shared with that vendor. So it becomes a saving for the vendor as well. Then it becomes a true win-win, because you're creating efficiency and then distributing the proceeds of that efficiency between your company and the vendor. So like any other commercial discussion, that I think is a fundamental motivator. Now coming to general efficiency, I believe a lot of relatively small distributors and vendors also are very open to education. So I think just basic coaching, training, development, making them aware of the benefits of just-in-time efficient inventory management can drive a lot of action from their end.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, VMI model only works if it's adding value in the system. अगर सिर्फ cost transfer ही करनी है from our P&L or balance sheet, to vendors P&L and balance sheet, then there's no point. Balki let me add one point. Generally FMCG companies, big companies like P&G and Tipal, इनकी cost of capital या cost of financing जो है, that's much lower than at times cost of financing of the vendors. So in fact, उल्टा भी हो होता है. Actually, ज़्यादा efficiency इसमें आ जाती है कि you may have some sort of inventory at your end. Okay, next question is due to pandemic and extraordinary circumstances, we witnessed panic buying across the globe, which also results in acute shortage of some basic products. What's your input to cater and better handling of this situation if it happened again? समी आपसे ही रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि लाइक डू यू कुछ इस तरह का आपने ऑब्जर्व किया लाइक ड्यूरिंग दिस पैंडेमिक सेफगार्ड के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से अगर हम बात करें?
जी बिल्कुल. So I think we did experience shortage of product for a few weeks, but then it got fixed. And this whole COVID pandemic was such that it was very difficult to forecast it. So generally supply quality का number one driver होता है forecast accuracy, but you couldn't have forecasted this. The second ability is the agility of the supply system to absorb shocks, right? Both ways, and then massive increase in demand, but also a potential massive decrease in demand. And there are multiple ways of managing it. But the best way is having BCP for every single element of the supply chain, be it raw materials, be it production. So when the plants got shut down, we had well thought through BCPs. Had the plants not opened with the lockdown, we would have immediately activated those BCPs. Similarly, all the elements of logistics, be it the central warehouse or the sub warehouse or distributor warehouse, we had backup. By BCP, I meant backup business continuity plans. So thinking about crisis in advance when you're not in a crisis mode is the best time to design plans. So I believe the best answer, and it's a generic answer, I wish I could give a specific answer, but it would be so different by category, is to create more agility in the supply chain to absorb such shocks, both of demand increase or demand collapse. And for that, we have to just plan it through element by element. There is no specific broad answer which can solve all the problems.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have another question? Team, do we have another question?
No, Shakib, end of questions.
Okay, excellent. I wish I could have asked a question about accuracy of sales forecasting, because ये सवाल हमेशा हमारे हमें खास तौर पे मैं आजकल supply chain देख रहा हूँ तो मेरे तो बड़ी लड़ाइयाँ होती हैं sales and marketing के साथ. But I will hold that question for some other time, because इस पर एक घंटे की बहस हो जाएगी. Thank you very much. I'm very, very thankful to all the panelists and specialists and the audience for a very active participation in the webinar. I hope that it's been a very learning evening for all of us, where we have discussed few challenges and the opportunities of the sector, besides highlighting some interesting consumer insights and best practices followed locally and globally. We are living in an era of information where loads of data is moving around us, especially if we are in FMCG sector. Filtration of such data to get some relevance and its conversion to information, and then analytics for decision making is the name of the game. We are going to observe artificial intelligence and IoT technologies creeping into our information system, and the sooner it happens, the better it will be. With technology and automation keep influencing our society, and we can't and we should not stop it. So the key influencers of our society must initiate a comprehensive plan to educate and train our massive untrained and unskilled workforce, to transform them in a manner so that they would be ready to cope up with the new demands of the business. This is very important. और अगर हम जो हमने poll भी किया उसमें भी अगर आप देखें तो people are very much concerned about this. Climatic changes due to global warming is probably the biggest threat for FMCG and food industry, as well, since it may damage our industry, agriculture sector, and create massive food security issues. To mitigate this high-risk business require backward integration for more than ever to secure their supply chain. हमारे पास टाइम नहीं था, वरना इस एरिया पे भी हम बात थोड़ा सा और डिटेल में करते. A few more takeaways for during the session. एक तो बात मैं जरूर रिपीट करूंगा जो हमने शुरू में की कि communication with the employees, with your staff, with your teams in challenging situation बहुत critical होती है, to give them confidence, to give to let them know that the company is there to help them. ये बड़ा important होता है, and it matters a lot. Consumers are now more concerned with their health and well-being, as Arfa mentioned in her presentation, and accordingly functional communication probably may play an important role in FMCG future growth, which leads to a possible shift in future investment and communication strategy for certain FMCG companies as well. New business models are emerging and may disrupt the existing route to market strategies. यासर ने बड़ी अच्छी एक बात कही थी कि technology basically birth दे रहा है different business models को, different opportunities निकल कर आ रही हैं. So there is no nothing to fear from the technology. आपको help ही करेगा आगे. E-commerce and its emergence as a direct to consumer channel, yes, this is also very important. So these are some of the important points जो हमने learn किए, और भी बहुत सारे points, and in the end जब हम after this this webinar we used to publish our learnings, उसमें हम कुछ चीजें और भी हम add करेंगे. To close this very good session, I now like to request Khalid Rahman sahab to take charge for a thank you note. Over to you, Khalid sahab.
Thank you very much, Shakib. I can't take away the good work that you've done by taking charge. You're still in charge. So thank you very much for being a wonderful moderator. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. A very good evening, and thank you for being with us today. I personally greatly enjoyed the discussion, and I'm certain that our audience would have also benefited from the discourse from the leaders in the FMCG sector and from the restaurant industry and the technical experts. I think we got some really good insight into how the FMCG and the restaurant industry took full advantage of the the COVID, in terms of advanced preparation, in terms of forward thinking, and to be able to bring together and recognize that people are still one of the major factor in success of any business. And everybody used digital transformation and technology, but people were at the forefront of the change that was taking place. And I'm glad that people are still recognized as being the most important resource in any industry. We heard from Raza about the delivery systems. And I think that was the key in terms of putting that side of the business and not really disrupt the supply chain. And delivery obviously played a most important role in terms of be able to outreach both in terms of the restaurant business and the fast moving consumer goods, because whoever I knew was basically ordering their supplies online rather than going. And I think the delivery factor played a very important role. I think we got very, very good information from our two technical experts, Arfa and Yasir, and the presentations that Arfa gave was exceptionally good in terms of telling us how the trends are changing and what are the new norms in terms of business and how the consumer pattern and the consumer thought process is changing and how will it change going forward. Yasir was very apt on digital transformation, and I think that is the key going forward. And I think people have understood that the efficiency and the benefit that we could got, the scare factor probably went out by forced use of digital means of business and communication. With that, I would like to record my deepest gratitude to our panel members, Samar Hayat, Sami Ahmed, Raza Pir Bhai. I haven't met any one of you before, but really I was deeply impressed with the great communication and the knowledge that you shared with us. It was very, very good and extremely useful for me. And as I said earlier, I'm sure it would be for the audience as well. The technical experts, I'm extremely grateful, Arfa Sayed and Yasir Suleiman Mehman. Thank you very much for being with us today. And this is the first time that we invited technical experts into our webinars. And thank you, Shakib, for bringing this whole webinar up and structuring it. And I think it worked very well. And I think this could be something that we could use also in the future in terms of having expert knowledge into our webinars for the benefit of our members. Last but not least, Shakib, you have been a very active member of the PIB committee. You have always helped us and supported the efforts of the PIB committee, and I'm grateful to you for putting this webinars together and for being a wonderful host and a moderator. So thank you very much, Shakib, once again for the good work that you've put in. This has been our 10th serial of a series of webinars, which is being hosted by the Professional Accountants Business Committee of ICAP, which is conducted in collaboration with our regional committees. To put all these webinars together, it's a difficult task in terms of planning, coordination, and all our members are volunteers. We have a group of ICAP staff also who's working with us, but all the thinking and putting together getting all the speakers and structuring the whole webinars done by volunteers who are all very senior members of the business of the finance community, but they give a lot of time for the work that is done by the PIB committee. I would like to thank Fuad Aftab, who has always been very forthcoming and proactive in supporting these webinars. Abdul Qadir, who is also from the FMCG sector. Thank you, Abdul Qadir. Mohammad Umair, excellent, continues to perform and deliver and forthcoming in terms of support. Rauf Jan, Khalid Noor, Murtaza Feroz, and from ICAP we have Amber Anwar, a young girl who keeps on motivating us and moving us forward. Imran Hafiz and Adnan Osmani from IT, Arsalan Rabbani and Shahnawaz Abro from marketing. And I'm thankful for the dedicated efforts and for these webinars serial a great success. As I mentioned earlier, that this is our 10th webinar. Earlier webinars were initially on broader topics of economy, business transformation, organizational resilience, and now our discussion on specific business segments and new initiatives. So we've had discussions on the oil and gas sector, healthcare and pharmaceutical, financial services, power sector, and today it was on FMCG and restaurants. Our future webinars are planned on OMC, refineries, textile, cement, auto, and other industry, and we look forward to the participation of the audience. After each webinar, a post-webinar paper summarizing the discussions and including questions and answers is published. And you'll be pleased to know that these papers are included in the Knowledge Gateway of International Federation of Accountants publication. So this is something that we are very proud of because all the information, all the knowledge base is put down in this document, and then it's being used globally. Briefly about the Professional Accountant Business Committee of ICAP. This committee is in existence to serve our membership working in business and industry, which is around 80% of the total membership of ICAP. And I'm glad you asked the question on the expectations of the finance professionals from our business leaders. And that is exactly the mindset of ICAP, that we need to change our members from simple bookkeepers and finance experts into more into business partners and strategic thinkers, and providing the support to the business for the business to actually evolve and grow. So this is what is also one of the major focus of ICAP in terms of changing the conventional mode into a more forward-looking business, and in terms of the strategic role, without compromising, obviously, the basic structure of good financial reporting and controls. Those are something that we cannot let go of, but apart from that, and nothing stops us in terms of providing support to the business while doing the job of being financial controllers. There are a number of initiatives that the Professional Accountant Business Committee have taken. We have an annual CFO conference. Unfortunately, this year we had to defer it because of COVID, but we are working on having this conference. It's a mega conference of about 2,000, 2,500 people attending conferences, and we're looking at virtual, but we'll see as to how it evolves. Now, I would like to conclude by thanking the President ICAP, Mr. Khalilullah Sheikh, and the council members of ICAP for the guidance, support, and encouragement. May Allah bless you all and keep you all safe and healthy. Good night and Allah Hafiz. Pakistan Zindabad, Pakistan Paindabad. Thank you very much once again for all of you, and we look forward to interacting with everybody in due course of time. Thank you, Shah.
Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you.